I was watching a documentary the other day titled Out of Mind, Out of Sight. It follows the lives of four psychiatric patients living at a forensic psychiatric hospital, meaning that all of the people residing in this unit had done crimes in the past as a result of their mental illness. But what struck me most about this film was how, like most of psychiatry, the film focused heavily on diagnosis. It was like the film was almost treating mental illness as a separate entity, as like a scapegoat, as the ultimate scapegoat upon which all the blame can be placed on. So it was viewing mental illness heavily through this narrow lens of the brain disorder model. And I think the problem with viewing mental illnesses through this model is that we end up losing a lot of compassion for the person going through it. And we end up losing a lot of empathy because then we start asking the question of what is wrong with the person? What is wrong with their brain? Instead of asking the question what happened to them. Because I think the development of a mental illness is so much more complex than just a few chemical imbalances in the brain. It can be attributed to their personality traits and quirks, to their personal history, to their intergenerational history, to the way that they process emotions, and so many other factors. Human beings are very complex and very, very simple at the same time. And so is the development of mental illness. I do not think that it's as reductionist as simply a few chemical imbalances in the brain. I think that the chemical imbalance in the brain is actually a symptom of these much deeper issues and causes like a lack of support, not feeling loved, not feeling seen enough, emotional neglect, trauma, so many factors. There's just so many factors. And I'll take Carol for example from the documentary. So in one of the scenes, she is really distressed by all of these negative thoughts and suicidal thoughts that she's having. And her doctor tries to calm her down and he tells her gently that she is loved. But she very calmly responds to that with, not calmly, actually quietly and firmly. She was really distressed. So yeah, she responds to it with, but I don't feel loved. And that broke my heart. Carol became a ward of the state at the age of 11. And the film never explores what her life was like before and after becoming a state of the ward. But from what we know in general, being a ward of the state means that you're constantly bouncing between foster homes, institutions, and strangers. There is no real security, there is no real stability, there's constant unpredictability, constant insecurity, uncertainty, and there's no consistent love. And yet, instead of exploring this, the film simply retreats to a brain disease model as if all of Carol's pain can simply be reduced to a few chemical imbalances in her brain. And I think that's far too reductionist. Michael's story hit me really hard as well. So, Michael's brother said something really profound in the film. He said that there's actually two victims in this story. In his story, so one is his mother, who got killed by Michael as a result of his mental illness, and the other one is Michael himself, who was a victim of his mental illness. And I'm paraphrasing over here, because I do not remember the exact words, but his brother also said something along the lines of how Michael needed a lot of emotional support from his mother, and he didn't really get it. Like, he barely got it. Maybe he got it in scraps. So what I'm trying to say over here is that I think nobody ends up the way they do without a reason. There's always a reason. Always. We are very complex and very simple at the same time. I think it's crazy to say that just because of a few chemical imbalances in the brain, a certain somebody developed a certain mental illness. I think there's always a history to it. It might not be immediate history particular to the individual, but it might have been history related to one of their ancestors. We never know. It can be way more complex than that, but there's always a reason. That's what I think. And at one point, In the documentary, one of the psychiatrists says, borderline personality disorder is considered as untreatable. And I think when we are viewing mental illnesses through the narrow lens of the brain disorder model, then of course it's going to seem untreatable, because the well-being of a human being involves so many other factors than just being dosed upon psychiatric meds and a few talk therapy sessions here and there. We need community. We need a good mind-body connection. We need good food, good environment, good living conditions. We need purpose. We need meaning. There's so many factors. They're both complex and simple at the same time. Yes, I've repeated that many times in this video, but yes, I would like to emphasize on that. And so when you simply view it as a result of a few chemical imbalances in the brain, then of course you're going to call it untreatable. But the problem with making bold claims like that without looking into other factors that might add to the person's well-being is that a lot of people lose hope. A lot of them lose hope. But despite all of this, my favorite part from the documentary was the bond that Cal and Carol developed, especially given how I saw the kind of connection that Cal needed. He craved deep connection, and seeing him get even an ounce of that with Carol gave me a lot of hope. And my key takeaway from the documentary would be that we're all human beings, and nobody ends up the way they do without a reason. And what we call as mental illnesses might be a symptom and not the deeper cause. And if we do not get curious about these deeper whys, about these questions regarding why a person feels unsupported, unloved, and abandoned, then we will never get to the real story. Because behind every diagnosis is a real person, is a person. And behind every person is a real reason. Thank you. Bye-bye.